So, how do historians actually know what happened in the ancient world? And maybe more importantly, exactly where it mattered? I mean, it's one thing to read a textbook that just tells you a civilization thrived thousands of years ago, but how do we actually trace their footsteps? Well, the answer lies in how we use our tools, specifically our spatial tools. We don't just treat them as pretty pictures, but as rigorous historical evidence. Welcome to this explainer, where we are going to decode the ancient world together. Okay, let's jump right into Section 1, the Great Map Myth. To start things off, we really need to completely rethink what a map actually is. We usually grow up thinking a map is simply a mirror reflecting the Earth, just, showing where things are. But that is what we call the map as illustration myth. In reality, we have to look at the map as evidence. Maps are actually arguments made by their creators. They are highly curated sources. Every single line drawn, every color used, every label placed. It's a very specific choice made by a human being who had a specific focus in mind. Which brings us to a kind of provocative question. Are maps ever lying to you? Well, okay, maybe lying is a bit of a strong word. But because map makers make such specific choices about what to include and, crucially, what to leave out, we absolutely have to treat maps as historical evidence that needs to be cross-examined. Think about it. A map drawn by an ancient Roman general is going to emphasize very different things than a map drawn by a local merchant from the exact same time period. One might highlight roads for moving troops around, while the other is highlighting safe harbors for trade. Neither one is the absolute, complete truth. They're perspectives. Right. Moving on to Section 2, Tools for Map Detectives. To stop being fooled and start reading maps like a true historical investigator, we need to upgrade our toolkit. The big takeaway here is that a historical map can actually be a primary source. And in social studies, distinguishing between primary and secondary sources is, well, it's vital. A primary source is original evidence, created right during the specific time period we're studying. So if we find a map carved into clay by a Babylonian scholar way back in 600 BCE, that is original evidence. We can analyze it to support our historical claims about how the Babylonians viewed their place in the universe. And this builds a really solid investigative method. Basically, whenever you look at a map, you have to follow 3 analytical steps to decode it. You can't just glance at it. You really have to interrogate it. Step 1, check the scale. Step 2, decode the symbols. And step 3, look for omissions. Let's break these down one by one, shall we? So step 1 is understanding scale, which is simply the ratio comparing a distance on the map to the actual distance on the ground. This is super important because it tells us the real-world size and distance of the ancient empires we're investigating. If an ancient map shows 2 cities inches apart, but we don't have a scale, we have literally no idea if that represents a breezy 2-hour walk or a grueling 2-month journey across a hostile desert. Scale is what turns a drawing into measurable historical reality. For step 2, we've got to look at the symbols. These are the shapes, colors, or icons deliberately chosen by the creator to represent real-world geographic features. Decoding symbols unlocks the mapmaker's mind. Are they pointing out vital trade routes, or are they marking mountain passes? Maybe they're highlighting areas rich in natural resources like gold or timber. Symbols tell you exactly what was valuable to the person holding the pen. And step 3, this one is huge. Finding omissions. What the mapmaker chose to leave out is honestly just as important as what they included. You really have to ask yourself what missing evidence the director of this map decided to cut from the frame. Did an ancient empire leave a neighboring civilization completely off their map just to make themselves look like the only power in the region? Yeah, it happened. Understanding what is missing is a masterclass in historical thinking and source analysis. Okay, Section 3, How Geography Shapes History. Now that we know how to read the evidence and evaluate our sources, let's explore the rules of the game, looking at how physical geography directly dictates human history. Physical geography literally gives us the clues for human behavior. It's like a giant equation of cause and effect. Take rivers, for example. They almost always equal trade routes and agriculture. Why? Because humans need water to drink and grow food, and frankly, water's the easiest way to move really heavy goods. Mountains, on the other hand, equal natural defense and isolation. Sure, they protect you from invaders, but they also totally cut you off from new ideas. And deserts, they act as massive barriers to expansion, very often defining the absolute borders of an ancient empire. You see, geography is not just some pretty painted background in the theater of history. It is the board where the game of ancient human settlement was played. Geography completely controlled where early humans could survive, where they could thrive, and who they interacted with. You really cannot ask historical questions about why an empire rose or fell without first looking at the geographic board they were playing on. All right, Section 4, Case Study, River Valleys. Let's put our new detective skills to the test with a worked example, focusing on a classic staple of ancient history, the River Valley Civilization. If you were investigating a map of a river valley back in, say, 3000 BCE, you'd find exact clues explaining why major cities popped up precisely in these locations. First up, non-negotiable, constant freshwater access. Second, you have flat land ready for large-scale farming. Third, the river itself acts as a natural water highway for trade, effortlessly connecting different settlements. And finally, seasonal flooding deposits nutrient-rich soil, creating a massive agricultural surplus. Place a river settlement right next to a mountain settlement, and the course of human history becomes incredibly obvious. One produces massive agricultural surplus and thrives on heavy trade. The other offers safety and natural defense, but total isolation and very, very limited farming. This spatial evidence brilliantly illustrates why humans overwhelmingly chose to build their first massive, complex civilizations next to rivers rather than on mountain peaks. The geography dictated their success. And finally, Section 5, your next geographic mission. We've covered the tools and we've covered the rules. Now it's your turn to take these skills, ask your own historical questions, and support your claims with evidence. I'm going to leave you with a quick transfer challenge to test these news skills out. Imagine you're a historical detective, handed a brand new map. If you analyzed a map showing a lush valley protected by high mountains to the north and a rushing river to the south, exactly where would you expect to find the ruins of an ancient city? And more importantly, why? Use your geographic reasoning to predict human settlement in this totally unpopulated landscape. Look closely at the scale, decode those symbols, and always remember how physical features shape human choices. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and good luck on your next historical investigation.